Welcome to Behind the Law with Justin Clark, the show that takes you behind the law and answers your toughest legal questions.
We are back, and this is Behind the Law featuring attorney Justin Clark, and we're talking foreclosures today and the fact that, number one, you should not wait till the last minute. The minute that you find out that the bank and you are at odds over the future of your home and the ownership of that home, that's when you should get a hold of an attorney. And like, Justin's always said over the past 3 years, they've been handling these things like no other person in town. So they're specializing in it. So why not take the opportunity to get the burden off your shoulder? Go ahead, earn your pay, treat your family good, and let him handle it. That's what he does. If you're a plumber or an electrician, he needs you, he'll call you. But for right now, let him handle the foreclosure.
Rob, I'm actually going to tell people about the foreclosure process a little bit because of all of these foreclosure filings, that means a lot of people are in foreclosure. And they need to know where they are in foreclosure because are they going to come kick me out of my house tomorrow? Or do I have 2 years? And I think there are a lot of misconceptions that if you don't pay your mortgage, the cop can just come over and kick you out of your house right away. And it's not like that. I mean, in Florida, they have to go through the entire foreclosure process, which can take a long time. Especially with the help of an attorney sometimes, you can make it last a lot longer because oftentimes the bank doesn't have proper documentation to go through the process. And you can fight them along the way. Because I understand that you did sign that piece of paper to pay that mortgage, but the bank still has to prove that they have the right to foreclose. I'm not sitting here saying that you're going to get your house for free because we don't do that. When people come in my office and say, I want my house for free, I say, you need to go see another lawyer. That's not what I do. My job is to get the best possible outcome I can for you, whether it's a loan modification to keep you in your house or a short sale to get rid of this property and owe the bank no money. It's one of two options for me.
Now, am I correct in saying that Florida is different than many states in the country in that all of our foreclosures have to go through the courts? In other words, you do have your day in court here if you go. Sure. But a lot of times they just sit there and go all day through files and they go, okay, John Smith didn't show up. Yep, you're out.
Yeah, rubber stamp it. You're right. Florida is a state where you have to go through the foreclosure process. So if you go buy a house in Florida, the bank only has a lien against your house. If you go buy a house in a lot of other states, the bank actually co-owns the house with you, meaning they could, if you don't pay them, they can literally just send you a letter and come take your house. In Florida, they have to go through the entire foreclosure process, which I'm going to explain in the second segment today, because even if you have a sale date on your house, it doesn't mean it's too late to keep it. I've been the biggest advocate of short sales for a long time, Rob, as you know, but I'm getting a little nervous now because these property values are going up quicker. People are seeing their values go up. Maybe we want to keep this house. Even if you're in foreclosure, there are a lot of ways we can try to keep your home. Maybe your kids walk to school. You love the house. Your kids grew up in the house, maybe. If you want to keep it, it's worth a discussion about if we can keep it or not.
But you've also told me that some people will wait. I'm not sure what they're waiting for, but they will wait until the day before they're going to be kicked out of the house, and they walk in your office and say, can you stop this? Is there any way you can stop this? Right. Well, isn't it better to get at it early?
Listen, we don't want to put our head in the sand. If you have a sale date tomorrow, it's going to be difficult for me to stop it. There's a chance I can, but it's going to be quite difficult.
All right, we're going to be back with Robert, who's holding on the line, and your calls, too, at 407-297-9696 or 855-297-9696. We're Behind the Law, and we are on WRDQ TV 27 and, of course, right here on News Talk, WDBO.
For more Behind the Law, including past episodes, check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gregory and Clark.
Mr. Clark, just kind of curious why the mortgage companies seem to take so long to make modifications.
Ask your question live. Tune into FM 96.5 WDBO Sundays at noon and ask Justin your question. Stay tuned. Justin Clark will be right back with more Behind the Law. Welcome back to the show that takes you behind the law and answers your toughest legal questions.
The numbers are 407-297-9696 or 855-297-9696. But right now, let's go to the phones. We have Robert on the line. Robert, thank you for holding. You're talking to attorney Justin Clark.
Mr. Clark, just kind of curious why the mortgage companies seem to take so long to make modifications. I know of instances where people have been working on a modification for 2 and 3 years and still haven't gotten anywhere with them.
I think you'd be making more of a statement if you said you knew of a situation where someone didn't work on it for 2 or 3 years because they take a long time. I don't believe, and you can call me Justin, by the way, Robert, by all means. I don't think that these banks really try to make it last this long. I think there's an incredible amount of incompetence going on over there. And everyone that tries to do this themselves, anyone who's trying to do a modification themselves says, Justin, my God, it's like a part-time job. I want to kill myself. This is the worst thing I've ever been through. Half the time they're crying when they come in because they get mistreated. They get told, oh, we got all your paperwork. It'll be a few days and we'll have this whole thing behind you. The banks make them feel like they're about to get it done. And it's an endless process and it's miserable, Rob. And I don't think I can sit here on the air and describe the pain and frustration that the people trying to go through a modification feel. You have to sit in the office on my side of the desk with them thousands of times to really understand what they're going through. It's a brutal process. Doing a modification by yourself is the worst thing that you can do. People finally, when they come in my office after a year, normally they try for a year to get a modification before they come see me. And they say they're either homicidal or suicidal or both. I try not to say that today, but that's what they say. They tell me, they're like, this is awful. And they're like, man, I just wish I would have hired you a year ago. I could have saved myself so much time and just misery. So, I mean, Robert, I think to answer your questions, I don't really think it's a plan. I think that they're just incompetent. And you know, in their defense, a lot of these things happen all of a sudden. All the banks started failing. Everyone was getting behind on their mortgage, so it happened very quickly. But they've had several years now to get the stuff together. I mean, and it doesn't seem like they're doing a whole lot of a better job, although I am seeing some better modifications now.
Didn't the crash begin about 07?
Yeah, 07, 08 was the real peak.
Folks, take a look. It's 13 now. Okay, so they've had 6 years to kind of figure this out.
I know. It's still there's still a work in progress to say the least. But doing a modification is not the kind of thing where you just send your financial documents in and say, okay, give me the modification. It's really like getting a mortgage. You have to prove to the bank that you cannot make your payment at the payment that it is now. But if they lower it to 2%, you can make the payment, including principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, but you have to prove you can pay all your other bills too. So it's a very complex procedure. It's really like getting a mortgage. We work backwards. We start at 2%, which is the lowest they can go, and I just have to prove to the bank that they can make the payment if they lower it. But I also have to prove they can pay all the other bills as well.
We've also had people, and you may know of people like this in Central Florida and beyond, that have called Justin and said, okay, they gave me the modification, and I made my payments for 10 months, and then they came and knocked on the door and said I was being foreclosed on because one side of the bank's not talking to the other side of the bank. Now, that's ridiculous.
It is, and I see that happen all the time, and it doesn't make any sense. And really, I think it's probably borderline illegal to do a modification for someone and then continue to foreclose on them, despite the fact that they're making payments to you. But I see it all too often, Rob. I really do.
Well, and when you look at the bills before the Florida legislature right now, and there are several of them, but not one of them has anything to do with dual tracking.
No.
You would have thought that had been the first bill out. If you dual track, the bank's got to give you your house.
Sure. Well, let me explain dual tracking a little bit. So, as part of the National Mortgage Settlement, when the state of Florida and 48 other states agreed to the National Mortgage Settlement with the 5 largest servicers, they said you cannot dual track. Do I see dual tracking happen all the time? On every case. On every single case, they're dual tracking on it. I mean, every single one of my clients that's going through foreclosure is trying to go through some type of modification or some type of short sale. So, and we use it in our motions now to extend sale dates or whatever. Say, Judge, the bank, look, here's an email from the bank saying we're reviewing your client for a modification, yet they're still filing the summary judgment motion. Is this not dual tracking? Is this not right here saying they can't do this anymore? But they still do it.
I have a lease on a home that is now going into foreclosure. We just recently received a motion for summary judgment hearing notice. We have a lease until the end of the year. So what do we do now?
I've seen people come to my office many, many times with that 24-hour notice to vacate, meaning the cops are coming to take your stuff out of the house in 24 hours, and it's not a fun feeling.
Stay tuned. Justin Clark will be right back with more Behind the Law. Welcome back to Behind the Law, the show that takes you behind the law and answers your toughest legal questions.
Back to Justin Clark. We're talking foreclosures today.
I'm going to go through the foreclosure process, Rob. It's something that we spend a lot of time talking about modifications and short sales, not really the litigation aspect of it, because there's obviously a process that the banks have to go through. So I'm going to kind of tell you the process, what you can do, so at least the people now at home or in the car will know where they are in the process, how much time that they have. And if you have questions, obviously feel free to call us or call my office as well. So the first part of a foreclosure, obviously, is you get behind. You don't make a payment, okay? So when you don't make a payment, I find that it varies wildly how long it's going to take them to actually file that foreclosure lawsuit against you. Anywhere from about 3 months to, geez, Rob, a year, sometimes 2 years before they even file it. Now, Now, you're going to know when they file a foreclosure against you for 2 reasons. One is you're going to get a ton of letters from lawyers, advertisements in the mail, because they have ways to see. I don't do it. I don't believe in that kind of advertising, but a lot of people do. So they're going to you're going to get letters from lawyers saying, hey, we understand that you've just been foreclosed on. Here's how we can help. That's really the first way most people know they get sued. Number 2, a process server actually has to come to your house and hand deliver documents. Now, people come in my office and they say, Justin, but I didn't have to sign for anything. You don't have to sign. They just give you the document and they turn and run away, basically, because it's not fun for them either. They don't really like doing it. So you're going to have someone just literally come to your house, drop off documents. You're not signing anything. And from that point forward, you're going to have 20 days to file what's called an answer or a motion to dismiss. But you have 20 days. If you don't respond within 20 days, they can default you, meaning you're defaulted from the case, okay? So as far as the judge is concerned, you have nothing else to say. Even if you've been defaulted, it's okay. We can file a motion to try to vacate that default to where you can essentially come back into the case, okay? So even if you've been defaulted, it's all right. We still might have time. But, you do want to try to answer within 20 days. I don't want you to just hide in your head in the sand. Let's figure out what we're going to do. Now, if it's your primary home, a lot of times we're entitled to go to a mediation. So, in fact, we get the bank's attorney, and a mediator all in the same room with us, and we sit down and we try to work something out, whether it's a modification or a short sale. And in many counties, this is a requirement. So if someone comes in my office and they're about to get foreclosed on, I will oftentimes file a motion for mediation saying, Judge, my client has a right to mediate, and they haven't been afforded that right. We want to sit down with the bank. They've been trying to work something out with the bank, and nothing's working out. So we have a right to mediate. So, to be honest, the mediations aren't incredibly effective in these types of cases. You go there and the banks are similarly incompetent as they are just dealing with them regularly. And they're like, we didn't get your paperwork. We don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, look, I sent it on such and such date. Well, we don't have it. We don't care. That's all there is to it. The next thing, and now we're getting a little more important in the foreclosure process, is that summary judgment hearing. So the bank's going to file a motion for summary judgment. And at this hearing, that's where the bank comes in and says, hey, this guy hasn't paid me, it's been 2 years, and then you get a stamp, and okay, you have a judgment against you for a certain amount of money, whether it's $230,000, however much you owed the bank. And most importantly, though, on that day is where the judge will set a sale date, meaning a foreclosure auction sale date. And that's really probably the most important day, because that's the day that you really lose your home, okay? Now, if you're going through this process and you're going through yourself, first of all, I think you should call a lawyer. But if you're doing it yourself, and you go to the summary judgment hearing and you say you've been trying to work with the bank, 9 times out of 10, the judge will give you a 90-day sale date, okay? If you don't show up, it'll probably be a 30-day sale date. But if you just go there and say, Judge, I'm trying to work something out, they'll normally give you 90 days. So it gives you some extra time to work something out. So if you're going through this process by yourself, which is not a good idea, at least ask for 90 days, okay? Sometimes they'll give me 120 days. There are also ways to defeat summary judgment, okay? One of the main ways we defeat summary judgment is paragraph 22 of all of these mortgages says that the bank must send you an acceleration letter. 30 days to filing foreclosure. That tells you if you pay them a certain amount of money, that they can't sue you. We're finding a lot of my clients didn't get this letter. And so almost every time it defeats summary judgment. And then they're going to set a trial date after that several months down the road. And then at the trial date, oftentimes you're going to lose, and then we're going to ask for a 90 or 120-day sale date from that. Now, let's say your house sells, okay? Let's say it goes through the whole process. It goes to a foreclosure auction, okay? That's it. That's when the house sells. 9 out of 10 times around here, it goes back to the bank, okay? Because the bank always outbids market value. Always. If it's HOA, totally different. I'll get to that in a minute. If it's the bank, it goes back to the bank for $100 almost every time. After a sale date, you have 10 days to file an objection to the sale, meaning nothing can happen for 10 days. No one can kick you out for 10 days. And you have to file what's called an objection to sale. And the law says that there shall be a hearing on that objection, meaning they can't kick you out until you have a hearing on your objection to the sale. So there's more time. So there are plenty of ways here to defend this process. But it's so hard to do it yourself. You know what I mean? You really need to try to call a lawyer. And, once the objection to sale is heard, if that's denied, they can file a motion for writ of possession, and then you're going to get a note on your door from a sheriff, a real law officer this time, saying, you got 24 hours and we're kicking you out. Literally, they come in and move your belongings to the street. And, I think people go through this process, and they sometimes maybe a little naive about it, or maybe they're still talking to the bank, and the bank is telling them that don't worry about it, we got you covered. I've seen people come to my office many, many times with that 24-hour notice to vacate, meaning the cops are coming to take your stuff out of the house in 24 hours. And it's not a fun feeling. It's not a fun.
No way.
It's an embarrassing feeling. But there are so many ways to avoid that. You just have to make that step to go and talk to someone who knows what they're doing. Call me if you want, 321-282-1055, or call another lawyer who's been around doing this for a long time, because there are just so many ways to avoid that happening to you. But if you are in that process, it's not too late, all right? But just don't put your head in the sand, please.
Cannot imagine having all of your possessions while your neighbors watch taken out to the curb. Last resort,
no
folks.
kidding.
I'm telling you right now. I guess that's why some people errantly would walk away from a property when they get upside down. But then the deficiency could come and haunt them. But we're going to talk about that and much, much more when we get back. How about some phone numbers? 407-297-9696 or 855-297-9696. You want to talk to Justin Clark? We'll let you on, okay? Right here. We're Behind the Law, and you're listening to News Talk 96.5 WDBO, and you're watching WRDQ TV 27. We'll be back.
I have a lease on a home that is now going into foreclosure. We just recently received a motion for summary judgment hearing notice. We have a lease until the end of the year. So what do we do now?
Our show is pre-recorded for TV, but you can ask your questions on the radio live, Sundays at noon on FM 96.5 WDBO.
Stay tuned. Justin Clark will be right back with more Behind the Law. Welcome back to Behind the Law, the show that takes you behind the law and answers your toughest legal questions.
Right now, let's go to Jennifer. Jennifer calling from right here in Orlando. Jennifer, how can we help you?
I have a lease on a home that is now going into foreclosure. The landlord, the mortgage is at Bank of America, and the landlord was trying to work with the bank to short sale it. But we just recently received a motion for summary judgment hearing notice for April 10th, and now the landlord's decided to just let it go into foreclosure. We have a lease until the end of the year, so what do we do now?
A few different options, and you're not alone. Are you still paying the rent or not, Jennifer?
We are still paying the rent, yes.
Okay. I mean, have you talked about maybe a slight reduction or anything? Most of the time if I'm representing the landlord, I say, you know what you should do? You might want to talk to your tenant. They're going through all this crap now because of you. Why don't you try to lower the rental rate just a little bit? Because they're having to go through these issues with you. And I think that's probably the kind thing to do. But I think Jennifer's probably more concerned now with how much time does she have in the house as a renter. Mm-hmm. One thing that you can absolutely do is if you show up at the summary judgment hearing and you express to the judge what's going on, in all likelihood they're going to give you 90 or 120 days before the foreclosure auction. Now, a good thing, too, for you is after the auction takes place, and I'm very convinced if you're in Orange County, they'll give you 90 to 120 days. Even if you're the renter, you don't really have any say-so, but they're just going to have sympathy for your situation. So ask for 90 or 120 days, and you'll probably get it. meaning that's another 3 to 4 months that you can live there after this April 18th hearing. Also, if you still have a lease, you're going to be entitled more than likely to an additional 90 days after the sale date due to the Obama administration. They signed a bill a couple years ago now giving tenants 3 more months in the house after the sale date. So in all likelihood, you're going to have between 6 and 7 months remaining in the house. And lastly, Bank of America, once they buy it, might be interested in renting it to you as well. And then the last option is you call the landlord and you try to buy it via short sale yourself.
All right, very good. So thank you very much for the phone calls today. We don't have time for any more calls, but Justin, we're down within 2 minutes. So can you kind of give us, you're the attorney, give us a summary there, sir.
If you're going through the foreclosure process, let's talk about it. Let's get together and figure out what we can do. Whether you want to save your house, maybe it's time. Your house value is going up now, finally. It's been a long time since we've been able to say that. So maybe if you want to save the house, it's time to consider a loan modification or other ideas that I have for saving your home. But lastly, if you are just trying to ride it out and let your house go, make no mistake, once the bank forecloses on you, they can sue you for a deficiency judgment. Don't just walk away.
We want to thank Laurel, and we want to thank David, and, of course, the entire crew, radio and television alike. And we can't wait to see you next week right along with us right here as we're Behind the Law on News Talk 96.5 WDBO and WRDQ TV 27.
Thank you for watching Behind the Law with Justin Clark. Be sure to join us again next week as Justin takes you behind the law and answers your legal questions.